I'm recording. So you're gonna sit where you sit for now, and then I will mark it down, and then I'll have to figure out the people who aren't here today where they're gonna sit when they do come. All right. So we had week one, we had 1 day last week online. So we had this to take up so much space. And I need to start putting down due dates, but this homework 1 and lab 1 will be due Wednesday. I always try to always give a week. Some people have already given it to me. Some people have given me 2 labs and 2 homework. Some people are way ahead, which is fine. But don't get too far behind. It can catch up with you. All right, so there's a new homework. The homework there tends to be a HTML part, a CSS part, and a JavaScript part, at least in the beginning. And I sort of grade them all separately. So if for some reason one of them's giving you a problem, usually I like things sort of put together and kept as one, but I do grade these separately. So if one of them's giving you an issue and you have a question, but you want to get the others 2 in, that is fine. Let's have a quick peek. So for the first few weeks, or week 2 to like, I don't know, week 7 or something like that, there's just a survey of HTML elements. So you use an element, you see if you know what it does on the page. You'll make a page. It can be anything you want the page to be about, but it should have use these elements. Then there's a CSS part where you're using new fonts and making a little menu. If you want to combine these and put the CSS and the HTML together, that's fine. Should probably just give me a heads up in your email when you send it to me that you combine these things. And then there's in this case, a JavaScript part, which does some work with some radio buttons and checkboxes, I think. Yes. Okay. So sometimes the homework has sort of nothing to do with what we're doing in lab, but in this case, part 3, the JavaScript, is very much related to some things we'll be doing this week. Okay. And that will be due in a week, so that's due Monday in a week. Okay, so that was homework 2. A lab 2, I'm showing you how to work with selects. And I'll show you a few other examples of things. So here is I'm downloading something with a select. Okay, and it should be in my downloads. There it is. A lot of other crap in my downloads. I'm going to open, I work in Visual Studio Code. That's Python crap. I'm going to open a folder, 2 downloads. And I'm finding the select. So I need to clean out my downloads, but here's my select. And I am going to, I don't know if on this computer, if I have my live server. So I'm going to find the live server extension. I don't have it installed. So I'm going to install the live server. And the live server is overkill for now, but when we are working with data files, then we'll need the live server. So if you get used to working with the live server now, then when it comes time when you really need it, you'll be used to it. Okay, so I've installed my live server. And here's my select. And with my live server, I can right click. And it's also important that I opened a folder and not a file. If I open a folder and then I go to what they call the Explorer and I find my file, the live server will work. If I just directly open my file in Visual Studio Code, the live server is going to complain. So the live server wants to serve a folder. It wants there to be sort of like a home folder and then give you things within the folder. So to work with live server, do file, open folder, not open file. So open the folder, then in the Explorer, I've already done that, and then find the file you're interested in that folder. So I've opened up the downloads folder as my folder, and I'm going to serve. And here's my select _ S22. And now I can right click on that page and open it with the live server. That's going to open it with a browser. I think in this case, probably by default, it's usually Edge because it is a Visual Studio. It is a Windows thing, so they like Edge. And here is a drop down. So previously we played with inputs and buttons. So we're adding to our repertoire of things that the user can interface with. And here is a list of things in a drop down list, and you pick one. So I'm going to pick the size medium and then choose it. And then I have an alert. I'm also doing something. If I right click and choose inspect, I can choose the console. And this is some icon it wants to download and didn't properly download. So that's not a real error on my part. But if I run the page again, I'll choose medium and click it. I'm alerting, this is an alert. And I'm also putting something in the console. So there's a console log that's printing to the console. Nothing on the page. The console's not seen except by somebody who does this trick to see what's in the console. But the console is also where you will see errors. So if your page isn't working, one of the places for you to look to see what might be going wrong while your page isn't working is the console. So maybe you don't want to do like I'm doing with typing things in the console to sort of see how things are going behind the scenes. But if you have mistakes, this is the place to find them. So you should get used to working with the console. And it gives you, well, let me make a mistake now on purpose. So that would be in the JavaScript. And here's my handle, a button, and I'm getting something off the page called cell size. Let me say cell size 77. I don't think there's a cell size 77, so it should yell at me in some way. So let me save that. I can open the lot with live server again, or I can refresh the page. Either way, I'll refresh the page. And choose medium and choose the size. And now I'm getting cannot read properties of null. So I'm trying to read the value of an object, of an element on the page that has this ID that doesn't exist. So there's no such element, so I can't get the value of an element that doesn't exist. And it's telling me, where did it encounter the problem? 74. And I just made the mistake on 74. So it gives you a vicinity. Sometimes it's not where the error is, but where it discovered the error. That is not always the same thing, but often it's close. Now, what was it? Cell size 1, okay. So again, I didn't show you that the console last week, that the console was also where you spot errors, but it is. And some people were already doing their labs and asking for help. And we ended up in the console. So now everybody knows to look in the console for error messages. Okay. So we saw what this does. There's a drop-down list. I've got a little bit of styling in my drop-down list where my every other option has a different background color. I choose a size and I click on the button and it tells me and alert the size. It displays it on the page. It puts it in the console. If I change the size, now I'm a large, it cleared out the display on the page. So there's an event of the button. There's an event of the drop-down list. The second one is more or less the same. That's still the first one. The second one is more or less the same. It's going to be loaded dynamically. So that will be a difference. And also down here, I have access to the word medium and the letter M. Whereas up here, it was only the easiest thing for me to get was the L, but not the word large. Okay, so this is what we want to understand so that we can work with the drop down. Okay. I have a style. So this is just the body, the color of the body, the font color of the body, the writing I chose. The input is the button. So this is the styling of the button. Why I have input twice? That makes no sense. That should just be one big input. The select is the drop down. And then the options are what are in the drop down. And there is this some styling in CSS called the nth child. So I have a select. Here's my select, which gives you the drop down sort of functionality. And then you have the options. Those are what goes into the select. And they're known as the children. The options are the children of the select. So an HTML page has a tree-like structure. We don't have to do any horrible tree stuff, don't panic. But you should just understand the vocabulary of like parent-child, that there's an open and a close tag for select. Then the options are in the select, and so they are considered to be the children of the select. Now, I didn't say here in my styling what they're the children of. I could, but I didn't. But options are the children of the select. There's not many other places you'll see an option other than in a select. But there is this nth child, even, nth child, odd kind of styling. And so you can figure out if they're the first child, the second child, the third child, whether or so you can figure out which particular child they are. You know, if you're the dreaded third child or something like that, you can style the third child differently. I'm styling the evens and the odds differently. And it's a standard thing you do for long lists. Now, I only have 4 sizes. That's not very long of a list, but it was an opportunity for me to show you the styling. So here's CCC is a gray and FFF is white. And they alternate between even and odd. As you know, numbers alternate between even and odd. So that was the styling. Sorry. So that was the styling. Let me collapse the style. Here is the body. I have a header. I have my select. I have my options of my select. This is my top select. I'm using the attribute to connect to an event. In this case, I'm using an onchange. So you should know like the main event of your basic elements. So when we were working with a button, we worked with onClick. When we were working with text inputs and number inputs, we were working with onInput. They're not the only events, but they're the main events. They're the easy to work with main events. And for a select, the main event is onchange. And you work with the event of the select, not the options. So the event belongs to the select, and you're choosing an option, but the event belongs to the select. So it's an onchange, and then I say, here's my function, that when the user changes what's in the select, they will come here. So it's not the second they click there, it is if they make a change. So there's a choice of small that sort of comes up automatically as the first option. And then if you don't do anything and you just keep it as small, then this doesn't get called. This gets called when, as it suggests, when you change it. Okay. The options have what the user sees, which is between the open option and the close option, and then they have a value. That's what you pass around behind the scenes. So that behind the scenes, you will work with the letters, but what the user will see are the words spelled out. I have a button. It has an ID, so I can identify it. It is the type button. The value of a button is what it says. And again, in this version, I'm using the attribute to connect to the function. I have a div on the page. Divs have open and close. I'm displaying some information. I do it all over again, just to show you two different ways. Here's my another header, a header of size, an H2 header. I have a select with an ID. This select has no onchange. I'm going to do it a different way. This select has no options. I'm going to do it a different way. So these are both, when I ask you to do an option, typically on the first lab, when you have options, you'll be allowed to sort of choose the way you want to do it. Eventually, I'll ask you to do the more sophisticated way. I'll have a file. You'll read the data from a file. Somewhere in the data in the file will be options, and you'll have to sort of load them in dynamically. So this second approach is going to occur more often in the class than this first easier approach. But if for this lab, you want to do the easier approach, that's acceptable. Okay. So if I don't say how you can do it, then you can do it any way that you make it work. And when I want you to do something specific, I'll try to be more explicit. Okay, so here is the select with no options in design and no attribute leading to an event in design. Here's the button, also no onClick, and a div. Now I'm starting the script. I am enabling the button by setting its disabled property to false. This is the code that's in the script that's not in a function. So this gets executed right away. I make the page, the browser makes the page and then starts executing the code. And this isn't in a function, so it gets called right away. And so I am enabling the button by setting its disabled property to false. I'm clearing out, no, this is not me clearing out. This is me choosing the small size to begin with. So I'm saying, what is the value? The value is of the selected thing in a select. The value of a select is the value of the selected option. So this is me sort of purposely choosing one of the sizes in the first drop down, and I'm choosing the small size. So I'm going to the page, I'm grabbing the options. This is the select where they're already there. 0 is the first one, that's small, and I'm saying choose its value. So make the select's value the first option, basically. So make it choose pre-select small. Okay. Here's a button that gets called by an event. This is the click event of that first button. Here's me going to the drop-down list, cell size 1. It's the element with an ID of cell size 1. And I'm grabbing its value, which is the letter, S for small, M for medium, etc. And I'm assigning it to a variable user input. I'm alerting it. I alert it twice, just to show you different ways to combine words and text. So I can use old-fashioned concatenation. So I can have some words and then break out of the quote and have a plus and have the variable and a plus and go back into the quotes. So that's one way to have combined words and variables. And another way is what we call a template literal. You use backticks. And then when you want to insert a variable within the backtick, you use $ curly bracket. You'll be able to pick the way you like it. If I say, if you have to make some display, which involves text and variables, you can choose your favorite approach. Here's a console. Here's me putting the size on the page. This is just old-fashioned concatenation. Here's me disabling the button. Here is what if they change their mind. This is what's called by the change event of the dropdown. I'm clearing out the display on the page. I am re-enabling the button. So if they change the size, they can click the button again. That was the top portion. Now I'm down to the bottom portion. I did not have attributes connecting to events. So I have to do that. So for the select, I have an addEventListener. I'm listening for a change, and I'm going to handle it with the function handleSelect2. My button, I'm going to have a click event, and it's going to be handled by handleButton2. Okay, so this sets up the events that handle, the functions that handle events. You remember that this second select had nothing in it, had no options. I'm going to make my options. I'm going to have, I have right now 2 parallel arrays, one of letters and one of words spelled out. I'm going to show them the size name, but I'm going to have, when they choose something, I'm going to have both things available to me. I'm going to make sure I can have access to the letters and to the words. So that's a little bit something that you get. The second version is a little bit more work, but you get a little bit more out of it. Okay, this is enabling the button. Again, this is not inside a function. This happens right away. Now I have to put the stuff into I have to put my options into the select. They were not there in design. So here's me going to the page and grabbing the second select, the empty select. And I just called it my select. This is an old-fashioned loop. Sometimes I loop 2 or 3 different ways, and so I loop 2 different ways, but commented the old-fashioned one out. Here's the old-fashioned looping. Start with a counter 0, go up to not including the length of the array, go up by 1s, make a new option, assign its text, assign the value to be the counter of the array, and add the option to the select. This is me just, that's all commented out. So this is me doing it for real this time. Instead, I used a for each. So in the sort of more modern, JavaScript's not a modern language. JavaScript's a very old language, but it's been sort of modernized. So this is part of the modernization of JavaScript. And so you start, in this case, you start with the array, you use its for each method, which will help you iterate over the array. I'm giving access to the actual element of the array and the index. So index is the counting, 0, 1, 2, 3. These are, item is the words, small, medium, large, extra large. I'm making a new option, creating an option that didn't exist on the page, so I have to create a new element. I set the text is what the user sees. I'm setting it equal to the item, which is small, medium, large. I set the value equal to the index, the 0, 1, 2, 3. The easiest thing to work with behind the scenes, if I have an array, is the index of the array, especially if I have a parallel array. And then I add the option. This could also be a pen child. In fact, the pen child probably works a little bit better. It doesn't work better for this situation, but it's something that works in more situations. Okay. Here's if I work with the second button, I get the value. But remember, this time the value is the index of an array. So if I want the letters, I say sizes. And if I want the name, I say size name. But what I get from the dropdown is an index. Value is an index. So I called it user index. If I want to get the letter, I say sizes with that index. If I want to get the word, I say size names with that index. I can alert it. I can console log it. I can display it on the page. I can display it on the page with old-fashioned concatenation. I can display it on the page with a template literal. So once again, I did something twice just to show you different ways of doing it. I disable the button. This is the change event of the second select. If they change their mind, I'm clearing out the answer and re-enabling the button. Questions? No questions. Okay. So what else do I want to show you? I want to show you this other HTML about other types of inputs. And so there it is now, data color autocomplete. Okay, so let's run it and then talk about it. I'm opening it. I put it in downloads. Downloads was the folder I was open to. So it appeared in my Explorer. I opened it in my Explorer, and now I'm right-clicking and saying open with live server. And here it is. I did almost no style. I think I have no style here. I don't have much style when I have style, but now I have no style. I'm going to pick a color. So this is an input for choosing a color. And I don't do much work. It does most of the work. I'll make more of it than I need to, but you can sort of pick a hue. What do I want? That kind of some kind of a blue, and then a shade of that blue. And there we go. So this allows me to pick a color. This hex is going to be what comes sort of just automatically. So there's almost no work to get the hex code from the color input. And then I do more work to get the RGB and even more work to get the HSL. And I'm probably just going to sort of point you to those functions and say, if you're interested, look at them. Maybe I'll look at RGB. The other one is more complicated, but I just wanted to do something. I wanted to have some thing about what comes out of it easily, but what you can also get out of it if you work harder. Here's the next thing. Another kind of input is for dates. So again, I just say I have an input of the date type, and the user clicks on the thing, and so it pops up to today by, I didn't do anything to make it do that. That's what it normally does. I'm going to choose Friday. I can't wait for Friday. And that says, so again, this first one is what pops out naturally, that the date, the year, month, day of what the user chose. So I chose Friday, which was the 28th. So that pops up sort of easily and naturally. And then this is me doing a little bit more work. I can use this information to do some work behind the scenes and get more information. Oh, I chose Friday. Again, that's not today. That's what the user chose. So Friday, January 28th to 2022. And I didn't choose, this didn't have me choose any time. So it's defined the time, I'm defining something behind the scenes, and it defined it for sort of midnight. And then that says it's 3.33 days from now. Okay, so this is very early on Friday, and we're pretty much a good part of the way through Monday. And then here's an autocomplete. So an autocomplete is halfway between a text input and a drop-down select. You can type, but there are also options. So you can type something that's not there at all, or you can start to type, it shows you some options, and then you pick from the options. So enter a flavor. So I can hit the drop-down and it gives me all the options. Or I can start typing okay, and I'll choose butter pecan. Down here, it's the same difference as what I had in my two selects in the previous version. One is dynamically loaded and one is hard coded in design. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, here's my head, open and closed head. No style, as you saw, it was just black and white. Here's the body. Here's my input. This is a label. Sorry, that's a label. Here's my input of the color type. That's it. I have an input of the text type. That's where we started. I had an input of the button type. I had an input of the number type. Now this is an input of the color type. And then here's a place for me to display stuff. Here I have a header, a label. Here's my input of the date type. So that was the first two things, the color type, the date type. Now here's my sort of autocomplete. Here's an input of the text type or flavors. But I have this word over here, this attribute list, and it connects to something called flavors. And then I have a data list that matches that has an ID of flavors. And here are the options, vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. It's a little bit different than my other options because what the user sees in the other options is what's between open and close. But here, the value is sort of what they see. So when they were interacting with it, if they type V, they get the value. So what they see is the value, whereas for the regular old select, they saw the text and not that. And I think if you put text in here, it's more like a hint, like or a comment or something. Not a comment that the user doesn't see, but like you could say, if they chose vanilla, you could say, oh, how boring, or something like that. So it's a little bit switching in the options for a data list. Okay, but here's the input. It's of the text type, so I can type in there, or the user can type in there, but there's an associated list, and the list goes in a data list. Its ID matches the name of the list, and then there are options, and the important things here are the values. And I didn't have anything between the open option and the close option. And then I have a place to display it. I'm doing it all over again, but this time my data list is empty. So I'm going to dynamically load the data list for my second sort of, I'm calling it an autocomplete. Okay. So I had no events. So here are all my events. They were all input events. They were all sort of inputs, a color input, a date input, 2 text inputs that happen to have associated data lists. But my events were all input, 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 input. And here are my functions. Okay. Here, this is my array to load up the second data list. Here is me getting the data list, and here's me looping. Here's me looping over the array to load up the options. Now, the third thing, this is the last thing on my page, but I put it up here at the top of the code because this is code that's not in a function that's called by an event. So this code gets executed right away. And so I put it up higher so that you would sort of take notice of it, because eventually down below, I'm going to start having the code that's called by functions. And so this happens, even though on the page, this is the last thing on the page, this happens before these other things happen, because these other things are called by the user, and users are damn slow, as we know. This is the color function. This is the function called if they choose the, when they interact with the color input, the top thing, I can grab its value. And the value is, I just called it user color, and it is the hex. So the hex code, the 6 hexadecimal digits, 0 to 9 or A to B, 6 of them with a you'll call it a hashtag, I'll call it a number sign in front. That's what comes almost for free. You know, this is very little code, and it gets you a hex code for a color input. And then the rest is me, I don't know, doing other things to show if you wanted to do other things with color, you could. So I'm grabbing the part of the hex code that deals with red, and the 16 says get it out of hex and put it into regular numbers. And so I'm getting the red and the green and the blue, and I'm displaying the red and the green and the blue. And then I'm doing this crazy math. Who cares? You're not interested. I just, you know, had a Saturday, I didn't know what to do with, so I converted the RGB to HSL. So you can get anything, any information you might want about color out of the color box. What it gives you naturally is the hex code. Almost no work, you get the hex code. And if you want to make anything on your web page, that color, that's easy because web pages work with hex codes. So if you're using the input to change anything on the web page to a color, it's easy because it gives you the hex code, and that's how you style things on web pages, with hex codes. All of this crap is, I don't know, me showing off, so ignore it. Okay, here's the date. Here's the function that's called by date. Again, there's something that comes quickly. So here's me just going to the page, getting the element with an ID of date input, grabbing its value. And that was just that simple slash. That was this, or not, it wasn't slash, it was dashes. It was year, then month, then date separated by dashes. That came like almost for free. And then here's me working harder to do other things to show off. Okay, I had it had the year and the month and the day, and they were separated by dashes, so I can use a split and get the individual pieces. And then there is a date object in Excel, Excel. Well, there is a date object in Excel, but this is JavaScript. There's a date object in JavaScript. And you put in the year. The month is 0 based in what you're working with in JavaScript. So when you're making the date object in JavaScript, you need to subtract 1 from the month. So when we run the page, we get a 1 for January, but we need to get a 0 when we're working with this date object. So here's my 0th part was the year, my first part was the month, but I needed to subtract 1 because it's 0 based, and then here's the day of the month. So that is the date that the user chose. Here's the date today. So if I don't have any parameters and say date, it gives me today. And then I got the time of those 2 dates and subtracted them. And that happens to be in milliseconds. Computer time, they like to work in milliseconds. And then I divide that difference by 1,000 times 60 times 60 times 24. There are 1,000 milliseconds in a second, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day. So this is converting it to that time difference in milliseconds to time difference in days. So that's how I came up with that, like 3.33 days. That was fun. Okay. And here is the flavor function. And I didn't do much in here other than display the flavor that they chose. So the E is, I did have a point here. So let me show you. Inspect console. Where's my console? Oh, am I not seeing my console? Start it again. Open live server. Inspect. And I don't seem to see. Console, there it is. It's showing me so much crap, it's all hidden there. So in that double arrow, I got to my console. There's my console. This thing is now this weird mix of I can type and I can choose a choice when it's showing me. And I just want to show you that they're all inputs. So here I start to type C, H, and so that was an input. So that my console is showing me what type of event it was. It was when I typed it was an input. I typed again, it was another input. And then if I make a choice, cherry vanilla, that's an input. So I'm interacting with the box in a different way, but they're all input events. The typing was an input. The selecting a choice was an input. Okay. So that's what this was doing. I sent the event as an argument. There was the type of the event. They were all inputs. There was the value of the thing. This isn't the event. This is the object that sent me there. So this is the text input with the connect associated data list. So this value is whatever in the box at the time. So it was C, then CH, then cherry vanilla. So E is the event, and it had a type input. This is the text input, and values what's written in it. So C, then H, then cherry vanilla, and then this is me displaying the value. So you'll see C, then H, then cherry vanilla. Okay, so That's what I wanted to show you. Any questions? Okay, what do you have to do? And then I'll give you time to work and I'll come around and answer questions. So first we did gold chains and now we're doing diamond rings. I don't know. Jewelry, not really. Okay, so there's a number input to say how many carats of the ring is. There are two drop downs to say what the color and the clarity are. And I'm just saying the behind the scenes use 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's a button and you're going to see what the carat was, what the color was, what the clarity was. You're going to do a calculation. Carat doesn't work in JavaScript, so you can't say color carat 2. You can say color times color. You can say color, I think asterisk 2 does work, but carat does not. But perform this calculation and display the results. And then if they change any of your data, get rid of the result. So there's no no color inputs, no date inputs. It's just selects. Number inputs, selects, button. There you go. Any questions on what you're supposed to do or anything else? Yes. One that I'm supposed to answer back there?
Yeah.
Okay, then let me stop recording and I'll come back and talk to you.